you calling?
Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Dwight D. Eisenhower to the stand, please. A reminder, you are under oath. Your first question.
Commander Eisenhower, what was your role in World War II?
I served as Commanding General of the European Theater of Operations and was later appointed Supreme Commander of the Allied Force of the North African Theater of Operations. During this time, I planned and led Operations Torch and Avalanche, the invasions of North Africa and Sicily. And in the December of 1943, President Roosevelt decided I was to be the Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, where I planned and carried out the Allied assault on Normandy in June of 1944, codenamed Operation Overlord. During Operation Overlord, there were approximately 9,000 Allied soldiers killed.
Were you aware of the plan to drop the atomic bomb, and if you were, do you agree with the decision?
In July of 1945, I met with Secretary of War Harry Stimson, where he informed me that there would be a test in New Mexico of the atomic bomb, which American scientists had finally developed. On July 16, 1945, I heard that the test had been successful, and I immediately expressed my hope to Stimson that we would never have to use such a thing against any enemy, because I disliked seeing the United States introduce something as horrible and destructive as this new weapon, and it was described to be. And moreover, I mistakenly hoped that the other nations would remain ignorant that the solution to nuclear fission had been found. But I was not aware that an army of scientists had been engaged in the production of the weapon, and that secrecy in this vital matter could not have been maintained.
In your opinion, was the use of the atomic bomb against Japan justified?
No. I was aware that Harry Stimson had calculated if America invaded Japan, there would be over 1 million casualties, a number which I felt had been very exaggerated. And I believed that if the Allied forces could invade Normandy with 9,000 killed soldiers, then to estimate that it would cost the Allies 1 million men to invade Japan is just preposterous.
Thank you.
Cross-examination, your witness.
Okay. So do you recall the meeting that took place in Germany with Harry Stimson, Secretary of War, in 1945?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, I'll just say what was said in that meeting. You told him that the Japanese were ready to surrender, and it wasn't necessary to hit them with that awful thing. So, yes.
Is that correct?
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, I'd like to argue that they were not going to surrender if the prosecution case would be a little bit patient with me to finish my evidence this time. In all due respect, it's just a little bit long.
Continue, please.
Okay, so after the war, tens of thousands of Japanese soldiers remained in China. Other smaller groups continued fighting in the Guadalcanal, Peleliu, and in various other parts of the Philippines right up to 1948. A year later, another Japanese soldier, Corporal Soichi Yokoi, had been found fishing in the Talofo River in Guam. Yokoi still had his Imperial Army issue rifle, and when questioned by the police, he responded that he had known the war had been over, yet he was not still ready to give up hope. Another Army official, Lieutenant Onoda, still protects a small island in the Philippines with a band of followers. One of them surrendered recently this year in 1950, while the others still fight with him against local forces on a daily basis. Now, does this sound like the kind of people who would surrender out of just rumors of a powerful bomb? I mean, they're still fighting. All this is after the atomic bomb, so I ask, how can you even think that the Japanese were ready to surrender at the time?
I do agree. I think that the Japanese were ready to surrender at the time, but I admit that it does seem like many were not in agreement with Emperor Hirohito yet.
Thank you. No further questions.
You may be seated. Your next witness.
I would like to call upon Japanese American imprisoned in a Nazi relocation camp.
Japanese American Nisai to the stand.
Hello.
Can you please introduce yourself to the court?
My name is Billy Zushi. I represent the many Japanese Americans imprisoned in the Nicey relocation camps in the United States. I'm here to hold Truman and his office accountable for his actions against innocent people and American citizens.
Why were you and other Japanese Americans taken to the Nicey relocation camps?
Many Americans held the fear that any person of Japanese heritage would be working with Japan. In 1942, the American government signed the Executive Order 9066, and under this order, the government was able to remove around 120,000 people of Japanese descent from their homes and send them to camps placed around the country. However, more than two-thirds of these people were American citizens, including me, and many of them were children.
How was the life in these camps?
The relocation camps were all almost identical. Within tarpaulin pine barracks, whole families lived in single rooms, some as small as 20 by 20 feet. None of the rooms had plumbing. Each block of barracks had a dining hall, a recreational hall, and building for showers, and unpartitioned toilets.
In what ways did Executive Order 9066 affect Japanese Americans?
We could only bring a few possessions with us to the camps and had only 48 hours to evacuate our homes. We had to sell most of everything we owned for far less than their actual worth. The conditions in the camps were poor. Living conditions were often built of subpar materials and with shoddy workmanship, and some of the camps, such as Manzanar where I was held, were subject to dust storms and extreme temperatures. Some internees died from inadequate medical care and the high level of emotional stress they suffered from being in the camps. Also, I have a letter by a friend of mine, an excerpt from a letter of a friend of mine. Tetsuzo Hirasaki was another Japanese American held in the camp, and he sent a letter while he was there that said, "Gosh, the wind's been blowing all night and all morning, kind of threatening to blow the roofs down. Dust is all over the place, gives everything a coating of fine dust. The food has been all right except for quantity. The medical situation here is pitiful. For that matter, in all three camps. The main and only hospital is at Camp 1, 15 miles away. Here in Camp 3, there is one young doctor with not too much experience and one student doctor working in an emergency clinic. They're supposed to take care of approximately 5,000 people, and they wonder why we squawk about inadequate medical attention."
What happened when you were released from these camps?
Many had to spend 3 years in these camps, and when they were released, those who had less than $500 were given $25, train fare, and meals on the way home. Many inhabitants, however, had nowhere to go.
Nowhere to go. Thank you.
Defense, your cross-examination.
I'm sorry for what happened to you. That's a tragic story. You stated you hold Truman accountable for the hardships Japanese Americans faced, right?
Yes.
Well, let me remind you that Roosevelt was the one who created these camps, and Truman was the one who ended them.
That is not so true, because Roosevelt did. That is a fact. But Truman did not end them. There was a Supreme Court case that had to end it, like the system, the American system, and Supreme Court had to end it. I would like to share that case. Will you let me? Huh? Can I?
Your next question.
All right. So acknowledging the fact that Truman actually ended these camps, is there anything you have to offer in this testimony against Truman other than your opinion?
Truman didn't, he didn't really end it. He didn't say, okay, I'm going to end these camps. The war was over, there was no need for them, they just stopped,
Actually, he did in 1946.
No, it was the Supreme Court's decision.
No.
Do you have any other evidence you would like to present?
No.
Thank you. You may be seated. Your next witness, please.
We would like to call J.D. Salinger to the stand.
I
Hello.
Hi.
Could you please present yourself and the role you had in the war?
My name is J.D. Salinger. I'm a famous American author, and I'm here today to testify against Truman.
Have you ever been in combat?
Yes, I was drafted in 42 under selective service, and I was a part of D-Day. I went through a lot of hard times in the war, like everyone has, and I still have many problems from the war.
What are your views on Truman?
Sorry?
What are your views on Truman?
I don't feel he's a very good president. I feel he gave America the right to destroy a nation, Japan, and I feel that his opinion that bombing Japan would end the war was just an opinion and was no proof, and there was no real reason that he should have done that. America should have searched for a different alternative to keep Japan down.
You mentioned in one of your novels not caring about the life of a Japanese person. What did you have to say about that matter?
Wait, sorry, can you say it again?
Could I repeat the question? You mentioned in one of your novels not caring about the life of a Japanese person. What do you have to say about that matter?
That was a metaphor, and it was just, I wrote a lot during battle, and that was just that was just how I expressed myself about Japan. And while I was a part of combat, and I do know that for fighting for your country, you have to do certain things and give up certain things. I do understand both of the sides. I get that.
Okay, no more questions.
Defense, would you like to cross-examine this witness?
Fighting on D-Day must have taken great courage and sacrifice, right? And you must know how it feels like to lose comrades in battle.
I do.
Do you actually have any evidence about how many people would have died in case a full-scale invasion on Japan occurred?
I don't remember. I don't know.
Not in general. Admiral Leahy, on the other hand, who is on the prosecution side, stated 35% of those who fought in Japan would die. 35% of the American force would have been killed. 500,000 to 1 million deaths were most probably going to occur. Up to 2 million Japanese soldiers would have died, and another so civilians. Now, do you deny that this would have been a greater tragedy?
What,
If a full-scale invasion occurred and so many deaths?
I'm not in the position to judge that.
Objection. There are no facts that could be proven just from her opinion. We need hard facts and evidence.
I have hard facts from our Admiral
Your objection
Leahy.
is sustained, as this witness may not have evidence or any information pertaining to those estimates. Do you have another question?
I'm just asking her to consider 200,000 lives and millions of lives.
You could ask her that question.
Look, when one man dies, it's a tragedy, and when 25 million die, it's a statistic. And I think that we really shouldn't. We should just value everything. And I can't judge that.
Okay, no more questions.
Thank you. You may be seated. Your next witness?
Next one is Chinese Chairman Mao Zedong.
Is Chairman Mao in the courtroom?
Who are you, and how are you connected to the situation?
I am Mao Zedong, Chairman of the People's Republic of China. At the time of the utilization of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I was the leader of the Communist Party of China.
What is the ideology of the Chinese army?
The Chinese army is fighting for a free, independent China. We believe that China has been repeatedly taken advantage of by the imperialist powers of China and the United States.
From your position, what were the intentions and motivations of the USA?
At this point in time, we feel that the United States are simply capital-hungry imperialists who acted in order to preserve their self-interest. Furthermore, we believe that the goal of the Americans is to frighten us.
Do you believe the utilization of the bombs are justified?
I believe that it was an outrageous action by Truman and his advisors, and is thus unjustified.
Defense, do you have any questions for this witness?
Now, as you have just testified to your direct examiner lawyer, you are apparently on the prosecution because you think the U.S. are hungry capitalists and we're trying to interfere in China. Is that correct?
Quite obviously.
Okay, I don't really see the point in trying to question this witness. Ladies and gentlemen, I declare that this man supports the prosecution solely because he's opposed to the United States. Is that really a reason?
You may be seated. You may be seated. Your next witness?
We would like to call Father John A. Symes to stand.
Good morning.
My name is Father John A. Symes, professor of modern philosophy at Tokyo's Catholic University. I'm a witness and survivor of the bombing in Hiroshima.
What were you doing in Hiroshima at the time of the explosion?
I was sitting in my room at the novitiate of the Society of Jesus in Mitsuku, approximately 2 kilometers away from Hiroshima.
Speak directly into the microphone, please.
When suddenly, at about 8:14, the whole valley became filled with a garish light. I became conscious of a wave of heat. I went over to the window to see nothing but a brilliant yellow light. Perhaps 10 seconds later, I'm sprayed by fragments of glass from the window. That is when I realized a bomb has exploded.
What did you do after the explosion?
I was bleeding from cuts on my hands and head, and I tried to get out of the door, but it was jammed. The opposite wall of the window was torn, and me and my colleagues made our way out of the room. Most of them had been injured due to fragments of the glass. We proceeded to the front of the house to see where the bomb has landed. There was no evidence of a bomb crater, but the southeast section of the building was severely damaged. Down in the valley, perhaps 1 kilometer away from the city from us, several peasant homes were on fire, and the woods on the opposite side of the valley were aflame. A few of us go over to help control the flames. A storm comes up and it begins to rain. Clouds of smoke are rising, and I hear a few slight explosions. A half hour after the explosion, a procession of people began to stream up the valley from the city. The crowd had thickened, and a few came up the road to our house, and we gave them first aid, bringing them into the chapel, which in the meantime we have cleaned from the wreckage. Some displayed horrible wounds. More of the injured came to us. There were wounded soldiers, and mothers carrying burned children in their arms. There were many collapsed houses, full of the wounded and dying. Numerous fires sprang, which soon consumed the entire district. Towards noon, our chapel and library were filled with the seriously injured. During the next few days, me and my colleagues went on missions to try and rescue more civilians that might have been trapped nearby. In this journey, I had seen with my own eyes burned people frightfully beckoning to us and children suffering from severe burns. The transportation of the wounded was very difficult, but we managed to save and take care of 50 civilians. The Japanese displayed little initiative, preparedness, and organizational skills for such a catastrophe.
What is your opinion on the dropping of the atomic bomb?
I believe that war in its present form is unjustifiable. The bombing had caused a lot of deaths and damage, crossing both material and spiritual evil, as its consequences which far exceed whatever good that might result, such as ending the war, in order to avoid total destruction.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Your cross-examination?
First of all, thank you for reading quite a few excerpts from your press release.
You're
We're
welcome.
going to use that. As we've mentioned, you wrote a press release about your experience in the bombing. That's evidence 5. Now, I'd like the jury and, of course, Father to just look at this highlighted quote. Can you read that, please, if you can see that?
Beneath the wreckage of the houses along the way, many have been trapped, and they scream to be rescued from the oncoming flames. They must have been left to their fate.
In this quote, you explain how events you cannot help or intervene in must be left to fate, don't you?
Yes. But, as I
Sorry,
said...
yes or no answers only.
Okay.
Based on this quote, you believe that if you can't help, you shouldn't help.
I did help 50 civilians, and I took very good care of them.
Okay. But you're saying that if you can't help anymore, then you shouldn't help.
Some people were... I
We
couldn't help them,
understand
they were
that. We're
trapped.
just saying, if you believe you can't help, then you shouldn't help. Is this what you're really...
We tried to help whoever we could help.
We understand that you tried. I'm saying that despite all your efforts as well, if you cannot help someone, then it's out of your power to do so and you shouldn't do it.
Okay.
Yes or no answer?
What is your point?
Is this true? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I'd also like to bring up evidence 4. Sorry, it's going backwards. Okay,
It seems logical to me that he who supports total war in principle cannot complain of a war against civilians. The crux of the matter is whether total war in its present form is justifiable even when it serves a just purpose. Does it not have material and spiritual evil as its consequences which far exceed whatever the good that might result? When will our moralists give us a clear answer to this question?
now, in this audio clip, your main point is that you believe total war is evil and a sin. Is that correct? Well, one of your main points.
I believe that total war should never occur in the first place.
Yet it occurred in Japan.
Yes, it did.
So just to clarify, you believe that war against men, women, and children is a sin. Yeah, civilian men, women, and children
Yes,
is
the
a sin.
Catholic
But
Church
war
believes.
against men, women, and children in a uniform is not.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You believe that war against men, women, and children is a sin if they are civilians, but if they wear a uniform, then it's fine.
It is a sin. Total war should never happen. That's why,
But it did happen.
yes, so I believe it's a sin.
Do you have any further questions?
I'd just like to ask one final question.
Yes.
Do you still believe suicide is a crime and a sin, as all Christians priests believe? Or by spending time in Japan, have you just put up with kamikaze pilots and children learning how to kill American soldiers?
I am a professor of modern philosophy in Tokyo's Catholic University. Why are you asking me?
I'm still asking you, do you still believe suicide is a crime and a sin?
It's a sin.
Okay, but you put up with it.
Thank you. You may be seated. Your next witness, please.
Colonel Suburo Hayashi.
Colonel Hayashi, to stand, please.
Hello.
Hello.
What is your name and what position of authority do you hold in the Japanese Imperial Cabinet?
My name is Saburo Hayashi, and I'm the secretary to the Japanese War Minister, Kurachika Nami.
What is your opinion on the Potsdam Declaration?
I believe that the conditions of it were extremely unreasonable towards Japan. It was not fair how he had such a major decision to make with a time span of approximately 2 weeks.
Could you have ever imagined America going to such drastic measures to get what they wanted?
No, I did not. I don't think anyone imagined that America was capable of such destruction. Using the atomic bomb with consequences of health effects, destruction, and death seems inhumane.
Was the surrender of Japan deeply considered before the use of the atomic bomb?
Yes, it was, since America had cut off all of our means of supply, and we were left with very few options.
The time given between the issue date of the Potsdam Declaration and the dropping the atomic bomb was about 2 weeks, 11 days on Hiroshima and 14 on Nagasaki. Do you think that so many lives could have been saved if Japan was given a little more time?
Yes, we could have come up with an agreement or gone over the conditions of our surrender, which the Allies didn't agree with, that wouldn't have put so many innocent civilians' lives at risk.
Okay, thank you.
Defense, your witness.
Would a simple, concise telegram not have sufficed in 2 weeks to be sent in announcing Japan that is surrendering? How long does it take for a telegram to be sent?
Do you believe that 2 weeks is enough for a whole nation to prepare? A whole nation?
Question. Yeah.
I do not believe that. Obviously, it wasn't enough.
Also, you said we were prepared to stage the decisive battle on the Japanese mainland right before the end of the war. We thought we'd be able to beat the Americans on their first landing attempt. Therefore, you had plans of counterattack, right?
If I said it, yes.
Yes. Which means you were not planning or willing to surrender.
Well,
Yes.
with the conditions that the Allies proposed, it was extremely unfair, and we believed that it should not have happened like that.
So you're implying that the war would not have ended if the bomb was not thrown?
No, I never said that.
No, it seems like it. I'd like to evidence.
Speak directly into the microphone.
Sorry. As it says, this is a Japanese order posted in the prisoner of war camps in 1944. I would like to read, as Secretary of War, you should have known about this, right?
Yes.
It certainly must have went through your hands. All right. I'd like to read an excerpt from here. Whether they are destroyed individually or in groups, or however it is done, with mass bombing, poisonous smoke, poisons, drowning, decapitation, or what, dispose of them as the situation dictates. In any case, it is the aim not to allow the escape of a single one, to annihilate them all, and not to leave any traces. Is that not what it says?
Yes, it is what it
It
says.
is what it says. So if a full-scale invasion would have occurred, these Allied prisoners of war would not have returned. They would have been slaughtered.
It says that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
We have 3 witnesses remaining on the prosecution's team. Would you like to call your next witness?
We would like to call Joseph Stalin to the stand.
Comrade Joseph Stalin to the stand, please.
Okay, this is interesting. Yes, I have, but...
Introduce yourself.
I'm Joseph Stalin, the premier of the Soviet Union, a true heir to Lenin.
What do you believe was Truman's true motives in the deployment of the atomic bomb?
Comrades, Truman and the capitalists used this weapon, the atomic bomb, in a futile attempt to scare us Soviets. And it is no secret that the Americans wanted to plant their capitalist ideology into the lives of the Japanese. And what a better place to do it, east of both the Soviet Union and our close friends in China.
Why would Truman order the deployment of another atomic bomb, Fat Man?
The order to drop another atomic bomb on Nagasaki 3 days after the first is not a chance, comrades. It's not a chance that the day after we Soviets declare war on Japan, the capitalists would drop a bomb destroying a city. Truman was selfish, wanting Japan only for the capitalists. And as we can see with these atomic bombs, he would do everything to keep it that way.
Were you ever informed by Truman of the atomic bomb?
No. Truman casually told me once in our conference in Potsdam of a weapon they were developing, more destructive than other bombs. Nothing more, nothing less. To know now that the atomic bomb was being developed in this Manhattan Project. Throughout our whole allegiance during World War II, and Truman and FDR never thought about sharing this knowledge and weaponry with us, just goes to show that the capitalists were going to use this tremendous weapon for themselves only, not to bring stability as we Soviets would have done.
Do you have a response to the defense's claim that the atomic bomb saved more lives than it took?
To believe that Truman and the Soviet Union ever cared about the lives of other men than their own is just a lie. When did the United States ever care for the lives of 10 million Soviet men and women, ignoring our calls to open the Eastern Front against Germany, while they took their time and they let the months pass by and our people with it? Now, what they claim has saved lives, 2 complete villages are gone. The men, the women, the children with them, gone in a moment. And the Japanese always talk of dying with honor. But is this the way to go?
Thank you.
Speak directly into the microphone, please.
Okay. All right. As you said right now, Truman did tell you about the new weapon of unusual destructive force, right?
Yes, Mr. Lawyer.
What did you advise him?
Order in the court, please.
What did you advise him? When he told you about it, what did you tell him back?
I told him it's quite great.
Yes, in fact, you did. In fact, you did say that you were glad to hear it and hoped we'd make good use of it against the Japanese. Is that not right?
That may be correct, sir, but that's just casual talk, not knowing this is an atomic bomb, my friend.
You advised him to use it, and now you're testifying against him.
We use this weapons, my
Yes.
friend.
Yeah.
No. Yes, it's true, but let me speak. I am Stalin. My friend, comrades, a weapon is to be used against the enemy. It is not used to wipe away a city.
All right, okay. Why did the Soviet Union declare war on Japan a few days after the atomic bomb was thrown?
This was an agreement between us, agreed upon in Potsdam conference.
All right. Now, if the Soviet Union conquered Japan, would you not have set up a communist government which would deny the Japanese civilians of their rights of freedom of expression in the same type of an oppressive government as that of Emperor Hirohito's?
No, that was not agreed upon in Potsdam.
Okay.
We have agreed. No, it's gone.
I think you would.
Any further questions? You may be seated. Thank you, Comrade Stalin. Your next witness, please.
Next witness, Kantaro Suzuki, the Prime Minister of Japan.
Japanese Prime Minister Kantaro Suzuki. Your question.
Introduce yourself.
I am Kantaro Suzuki, and I have been honored to be the Prime Minister of Japan from the 7th of April 1945 to the 17th of August 1945.
Apart from the moral questions involved, were the atomic bombs militarily necessary?
They were not. Japan had already been defeated militarily by June 1945. The Imperial Navy and our Air Force were both in ruins. Factories and workshops were struggling to turn out weapons and other goods from scarce raw materials. Our oil supplies had not been available since April. By July, about a quarter of all the houses in Japan had been destroyed. Our transportation system was collapsing, and food became so scarce the people of Japan were starving.
Why did you not immediately surrender after the Potsdam Declaration?
We were willing to accept nearly everything, except surrendering our emperor. Emperor Hirohito is an heir of a 2,600-year-old dynasty. He is our living God that personifies our nation. We were afraid that the Americans would humiliate our emperor or even execute him.
How did you contribute in the decision to make peace?
Upon becoming the new prime minister, I saw the sufferings that the Japanese people faced. Lack of raw materials was a part of civilian life as well as military life. I released a report describing the material deprivation to the Supreme Council for the Conduct of the War. Following my reports, the foreign minister, the top four of the military chiefs, and myself met in May to discuss how to surrender.
Which big event made Japan firm on making peace?
On the 23rd of May came the greatest air invasion of the Pacific War. B-29 bombers dropped 4,500 tons of incendiary bombs on the already beaten Japanese capital. 2 days later, a second group of 502 B-29 planes flew low over the capital, Tokyo, and dropped about 4,000 tons of explosives. These two B-29 invasions destroyed 56 miles of the Japanese capital.
Do you believe Truman's justification that the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, a military base?
I absolutely disagree with this statement. Almost all of the victims were civilians. It has been uncovered that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were chosen as targets because of their concentration of activities and population.
Thank you.
Your cross-examination.
You are in favor of a peaceful negotiation, is that right?
Yes.
Why did you not respond to the Potsdam Declaration which stated, the full application of our military power backed by our resolve will mean the inevitable and complete destruction of the Japanese armed forces and just as inevitably the utter devastation of the Japanese homeland?
Objection. Asked and answered in the...
Your objection is overruled. She's simply asking for... It's true, actually, reword your statement because she was not in office at the time.
Why did you not respond to the Potsdam Declaration which stated, the full application of our military power backed by our resolve will mean the inevitable and complete destruction of the Japanese armed forces and just as inevitably the utter devastation of the Japanese homeland?
We didn't accept the Potsdam Declaration because it did not include our emperor.
Do you feel that keeping the emperor in his position was worth the sacrifice that millions of Japanese people made for him?
Yes, like I said, he is a 2600 dynasty heir. He is very important to us and our nation.
So you think it's fair for millions of people to die for one person to stay in power?
These million
Objection.
honor.
Speculation.
No, overruled. She's the head of the country as prime minister. We want to hear his opinion.
These millions of people who gave their lives in war honored their emperor. They did it for their emperor.
But they died in the process because you were too stubborn to surrender.
Your question?
I'm asking again, do you still think it's fair that millions of Japanese lives were lost so one man that they all looked up to could live in his position?
Objection. Asked and answered.
Objection sustained. He has answered that question and did agree with it the first time, for the record. Do you have any further questions before the witness leaves the stand?
Yes, I do have one. What is your opinion on the cruelties performed by the Japanese troops in massacres such as the Nanjing massacre?
The generals that took part in these massacres, they did it by themselves. They did not have any supervisor telling them what to do.
We're not talking about a routine attack here. We're talking about
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
We're talking about a huge attack that could have not been done without the
order.
Without the order and the acceptance of the emperor and yourself.
He did not agree to this. He gave his name to his generals, and they used it selfishly.
Does that mean you were losing control of your own country and of your own people who were fighting to save the emperor?
Is this for me specifically?
Yes.
I was not part of this. I was not prime minister then.
You are here to testify against Truman because he dropped the atomic bombs when you were looking to negotiate with the U.S. for a peaceful solution. Since you saw that Japan was running out of resources and was slowly starting to see its chances of winning slim down, why didn't you take more drastic measures to end the war in a peaceful way rather than let the killing continue and watch Japan self-destruct?
We tried.
May I ask what the question is?
Sorry?
What's the question?
Compound question.
Yeah.
Objection sustained. Do you have a question?
That was my question. I was asking. Should I repeat it?
Repeat your question, please.
Okay. You are here testifying against Truman because he dropped the atomic bomb when you were looking to negotiate with the U.S. for a peaceful solution. Since you saw that Japan was running out of resources and was slowly starting to see its chances of winning slim down, why didn't you take more drastic measures to end the war in a peaceful way rather than let the killing continue and watch Japan self-destruct?
We tried our best. We negotiated with Russia. We negotiated with other countries as well. The Americans did not acknowledge our surrender attempts.
There were no surrender attempts on your part. The day before Pearl Harbor was bombed, President Roosevelt sent a letter of friendship to Emperor Hirohito, which he ignored, and the next day he attacked a very important naval base. That was a first attempt of friendship, and since...
Is that correct?
Is that correct?
The letter?
The letter that was sent.
Objection. May we see the letter?
Yes. Evidence one, please. Thank you. There is the letter. A day before Pearl Harbor was bombed. December 6, 1941, is the letter, and December 7th, 1941 was when Pearl Harbor was bombed.
Your Honor.
Do you have any further questions?
I'm still waiting for her to answer.
Your Honor, objection. This is incompetent. First, Prime Minister wasn't in power.
Yes, but we are asking from this Prime Minister how he felt about the former administration, which inevitably he would know about.
May I ask a question? How can an opinion be hard evidence that...
Okay.
No.
The opinion of any expert witness is what the jury can then make the decision on. So yes, repeat your question one more time. This is the last time, witness, you will answer this question.
You were here testifying against Truman because he dropped the atomic bombs when you were looking to negotiate with the U.S. for a peaceful solution. Since you saw that Japan was running out of resources and was slowly starting to see its chances of winning slim down, why didn't you take more drastic measures to end the war in a peaceful way rather than let the killing continue and watch Japan self-destruct?
Like I said, prime ministers before me, the emperor, we have all tried to surrender. We have all made attempts to surrender.
There have been several attempts of friendship offerings to you, and
I would not know about these.
You ignored every single one of them, including the Potsdam Declaration, which was your final chance for a peaceful end to the war.
Thank you very much.
No further questions.
You may be seated. Now we get to hear from the Emperor himself. Who is your next witness?
We call Emperor Hirohito to the stand.
Emperor Hirohito. Your witness.
Please state your name and purpose for being here today.
My name is Emperor Hirohito, and I'm the Emperor of Japan. I am here today to help the prosecution team prove that Truman's dropping of the atomic bomb as an act of war should be classified as a crime against humanity because it was military unnecessary and morally wrong. After losing more than 1 million Japanese souls to American attacks such as the air raids and the atomic bombs, and witnessing thousands of my own people, women and children, limbless on the streets, holding their eyeballs in their hands and searching for their families or anyone alive in sight, I refuse to let Truman live as a free man after being the cause of the bleeding hole left not only in Japan's, but humanity's heart.
Did Japan make any attempts for peace prior to the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and later Nagasaki?
My nation made 3 attempts to bring the nightmare that was this war to an end through the neutral nations of Sweden and Portugal.
How did these attempts play out?
First, on April 7th, 1945, Japanese Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu met with Swedish Ambassador Vidon Baj in Tokyo and asked him directly to ascertain what peace terms the United States and Britain had in mind. He emphasized that unconditional surrender was not an option, as I, the Emperor, was not to be harmed in any way.
And what was the United States' response to that?
The United States Secretary of State Statinius told the U.S. ambassador in Sweden specifically to show no interest or take any initiative in pursuit of the matter. Similar other attempts were made through Portugal on May 7th and through Sweden again on the 10th, but the outcome was the same. Instead of trying to negotiate a peaceful solution to the war, whilst we had offered everything but the risk of me, we were disobediently ignored. The United States' persistent stubbornness to accept nothing but unconditional surrender prevented a peaceful way out of this tragic piece of history, and with it, the continued lives of millions of souls.
The defense claims that Japan was aware and was bombarded with 5 million leaflets awareing the Japanese people to evacuate the cities. Is this true?
It is true, but it is extremely important to note the uselessness of these leaflets. The leaflets were dropped, firstly, a mere 5 days before the first bomb was dropped. The leaflets were also extremely unspecific, highlighting the potential bombing of not 5, not 10, not even 20, but 33 other different Japanese locations aside from Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The leaflets also claimed that the U.S. was in possession of the most powerful weapon known to man, a very vague statement. How was Japan supposed to know that this was not merely a threat? And if not, how far was one supposed to go in order to be safe from this almighty weapon? Did the United States expect us to evacuate all of Japan, or all cities which were mentioned as potential targets? Japan was facing 2 threats at the time, Russia and the United States, so Japan did not even have a safe or immediate place to go. Furthermore, with such little time, it was impossible to safely evacuate so many potentially target cities without invoking mass panic. I'd also like to add that because there were 33 other different Japanese locations, that's a 3% chance that the city the person receiving the leaflet in would be bombed.
Why did you not accept the Potsdam Declaration?
We did not accept for the same reason we did not accept unconditional surrender. The terms of such a declaration were inexcusably too vague to apply over a country in such a fragile condition. It was also undeniably stubborn for the United States to ignore all of our previous peace attempts and suddenly come to force this concept down our throats with no negotiation. The U.S. even knew that we were heavily considering surrendering through messages such as the magic diplomacy, which they had intercepted. The surrender terms that were enforced by the U.S. after the Japanese accepted unconditional surrender after both bombs were dropped were tragically similar to those which us Japanese officials were not only willing to accept, but trying to reach an agreement with on several different occasions before. Had the U.S. been more specific with what they wanted, and specifically stated that I, the Emperor, was not to be harmed, then the Japanese would have likely surrendered much sooner. As I mentioned earlier, the biggest fear was the risk of what would happen to me, their Emperor.
Thank you, Your Majesty.
Defense your witness.
Can I please have evidence one on the screen again?
Sorry?
Thank you.
Which number would you like?
Evidence one, please.
One.
Yeah. Please note that a day before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Emperor Hirohito received a letter asking for this nation's friendship. You ordered an attack on Pearl Harbor to take place on December 7th, 1941. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yes or no question, please.
That is correct.
Thank you. This attack involved 6 Japanese carriers with 423 planes. At precisely 6 a.m., the first attack wave was launched, which involved 83 Japanese planes. 18 U.S. ships were hit. Casualties were 2,335 servicemen and 68 civilians. 1,178 people were severely wounded. Are you aware of this statistic?
I'm aware, but I was an ally of the
yes or no
Axis
questions,
powers.
Yes or no
Yes,
answer?
yes, I was aware of the statistic.
Your justification for this attack was that your nation felt choked by the measures imposed upon it by the Americans. Is that right?
I was an ally of the Axis
Yes or
powers.
no questions, please.
No, I would like to explain myself. I was an ally of the Axis powers.
Yes or no.
Well, I can't
It's a
answer
question
that
that requires
Your Honor,
yes or no.
it's that
We will allow the witness to explain his rationale.
As an ally of the Axis powers, I was, and with the Americans being allies with the Allied powers, although unofficially, they still sent support, and as an enemy of that, I was forced to counteract. But I would also like to emphasize that the 83 ships that raided Pearl Harbor was nothing compared to the 1,000 planes that flew over Japan and bombed cities and civilians.
Okay, well, I would like to draw your attention to why the U.S. put a blockade on Japan. The reason the U.S. imposed the measures was due to your violent expansion in neighboring nations, as well as a response to your attempt to monopolize the Asian market by imposing high tariffs on American goods. Do you deny this?
I do not.
What is your response?
I do not deny this. It was high tariffs
Thank
on
you.
American
Just
goods are no reason to bomb a country.
Simple no would do. Thank you. Should your expansion occur on the expense of other countries' resources as well as human lives?
What is your question? Please say more specifically.
You are expanding because to neighboring countries because you needed more resources that Japan didn't have. This expansion did not only occur on other countries' resources as well as human lives, because it is known that you attacked, you attacked plenty of times.
objection. Compound question, please.
Yeah, I'm trying to make my question 1 second. Okay. So I'm asking you, should your expansion occur at other countries' expense, on the expense of other countries' resources as well as human lives?
Well, I don't see how this has to do with the dropping of the atomic bomb, but
Just yes or no, please.
Objection irrelevant.
I'm trying to make a
No,
point.
we're going to give her a little bit of leeway.
not-
She is going to make an argument.
If you let me. Thank you.
So objection overruled, but continue your question.
Just yes or no, please.
it was Japan was looking to expand, and
Yes or
this
no,
was,
please.
Your Honor.
You will respond to the question, please.
Yes.
It should. Your expansion should
Your
be
Honor.
on the expense on other
expansion
countries'
happened.
resources as well as human lives.
Your Honor.
Okay.
Your next question.
Yes. During the late 30s and early 40s, you were fighting to take over China, the Philippines, and Manchuria, amongst other countries. Prior to Pearl Harbor, one of the most famous of all invasions is known as the Nanjing Massacre, which you issued the order to. Is that right?
These decisions were made by the generals and not by me. I was merely the symbol, as their god king.
Yes or no question, please.
No, they were made under my authorization, but they were not my decisions. And I'd like to say that the generals responsible for these decisions have since been trialed and executed during the Nanjing War Crimes Tribunal.
But you knew about this attack?
Yes, I
this
knew.
Massacre. Okay.
But it was not
So
my decision.
This took place between December 1937 and March 1938. Do you recall this time period?
I do.
Are you aware of the casualties of Are you aware of the casualties of this event? Are you aware of the cruelties committed by your troops?
I am, but I'm going to say it again. These generals
Yeah.
who were responsible
Yes or
for
no,
making
please.
the decisions
Yes
of
or
the
no?
casualties.
If you aren't going to take responsibility for the decisions you made, then why are you here?
Please.
Objection. Misquoting a witness. I have evidence here that contradicts.
You will have a chance to redirect the witness in a moment.
Okay,
And you can
Thank you,
answer
sir.
that question.
Let me finish.
I take responsibility for the authorization, but as I said, the generals who made these decisions have already been trialed and executed, just as Truman is being trialed now as we speak.
This event, the Nanjing Massacre, took place from December of 1937 to March 1938. This was plenty of time for you to know this and do something to put a stop to it, which you didn't do. And I would like to inform you and the honorable jury that the casualties were 250,000 to 300,000 people were killed.
Objection. Irrelevant.
I see no irrelevancy. Your objection is overruled. Continue.
May I ask a question?
No.
Okay. Because I don't know if the jury has been informed
Yes,
of these statistics
continue.
or the cruelties. In the Nanjing Massacre, 250,000 to 300,000 people were killed. People were beaten to death. 20,000 women were raped. Mostly civilians were killed, and this is in a matter of months, not years, but months. The point I'm trying to make is that Pearl Harbor was not the first of the atrocities that occurred. This man's actions exceed the crimes committed by other tyrants of our time. The civilian death count is too large to be ignored.
Well, just as you made your statistics
It was not a question. It was
clear
not
to
a
the
que-
jury, I would
It
like
was
to
not a
make it
question.
clear again.
You need to ask the
You need to
question.
make
I'm
one.
getting to the question.
Get to your question quickly, please.
Did you or did you not decide to move on to more effective weapons of mass destruction?
Nuclear weapons were
Yes or no?
Yes.
Was your nation investigating the technology for the construction of nuclear weapons?
Yes, but that was 2
Yes
years
or no,
after
please?
America
Yes
had.
or no, please?
Yes, they were investigating, but at a very slow pace.
Your next
Oh,
question.
yes or no, we do. Thank you. Well, okay. Have you heard? Do you know who Yoshio Nishina is?
I do. He was the doctor who was chairman of the NIGO and the FGO project, which Japan.
Okay, so you don't deny that you were developing a nuclear
Not at all.
weapon program.
But I would like to say that as Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor was strictly a military base, such a weapon would not be unleashed on areas with heavy concentration of civilians, unlike the Americans' bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Japan would only threaten the U.S. for better peace terms and never drop on civilians.
The U.S. and Japan, since you admit you were in a nuclear weapon, you were developing a nuclear weapon program.
2 years after you
it was
started.
it was an arms race. The America had to somehow protect itself from the weapon you were developing as well.
There is no way that is justifiable because the Manhattan Project started in 1939, while investigation on nuclear weapons didn't start in Japan until 1941.
Formally.
Formally. Oh, the Manhattan Project formally too, not until 1939.
Your nuclear weapon program was done on the expense of schoolboys. For example, do you know what Ishikawa is?
I'm sorry, where do you get that evidence?
I'm sorry, but the prosecution can't base their case on just questioning our evidence.
No, but you can't have any narrative. We do want to see where the evidence comes from to see if it's legitimate.
That's right, dude.
Can you present the evidence, please?
Yes. Ishikawa is 36 miles from the Fukushima Daiichi plant. Okay?
Can we see the source?
Yes.
The judge will allow the defense to read this particular quote. It is published in the New York Times, however, there is not a full citation, so we cannot be certain. We'll present the document to the jury to make their decision. Read your quote.
Okay. Should I read? Oh, yeah, okay. So, Ishikawa is 36 miles from the Fukushima Daiichi plant. It was here that as junior high school student in the final months of World War II, Mr. Ariga and his classmates were put to work hacking rocks out of the hill's then exposed stone face until the blood ran from their sandaled feet. The soldiers told them nothing beyond instructing them to look for stones with brown or black spots. Then one day, Mr. Ariga recalled an officer finally explained what they were after. With the stones that you boys are, this is a quote from the officer, with the stones that you boys are digging up, we can make a bomb the size of a matchbox that will destroy all of New York. End of quote. Mr. Ariga said he did not learn the details of Japan's secrecy-wrapped efforts to build an atomic bomb until years after the war. We had no idea...
Can I ask who the author was of this article?
There's no author.
Okay.
But, however, it was on the New York
Your
Times.
next question, order in the court, please.
Okay. Were you also responsible for the application of the Kitsuko strategy?
The strategy you just mentioned.
This has to do with nuclear power. Kitsuko strategy is something completely different.
Well, the students were simply working.
Do you know what the Kitsuko strategy is?
The strategy you just mentioned.
No.
What are you talking about? Please state more specifically what you want me to address.
You have 1 minute left.
Let me explain. The Kitsuko strategy is I guess, how you would justify it is means of self-defense, and I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's this strategy of self-defense included training civilians, even young children, to fight in the war.
Objection. You said, I guess.
No, I didn't say
You said, I guess, quoting you.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, your objection is sustained.
No, it's not based on fact.
She will base it on a direct translation.
Okay. This strategy is a means of self-defense, which include training civilians and even young children to fight in the war.
Your question.
My question is, did you or did you not sign this the document for its approval on January 20th of 1945?
I did, but I would like to say that that's the Japanese way. When an American soldier,
Let him explain.
when Japanese were trained, civilians were trained, children were trained, but such is the Japanese way. Just because two cultures run their militaries differently,
Okay, well,
doesn't give you the right.
Might I add one more difference in the military?
Sure.
Does Japanese Unit 731 ring a bell to you?
Not at the moment.
It's the biological warfare unit, where you would spread germs upon your opponents. And an estimated 440,000 Chinese died of this germ warfare, which is more than 2 times the amount that died with the atomic bomb.
Your question, please.
So how can you even complain about the atomic bomb if you did this to so many people?
Order in the court, please. Your response?
Yes.
Would you like to see the source of that as well?
Your response, please. Order in the court. Your response.
I would like I go against the fact that the Americans dropped the bomb on Japanese on the account that peace attempts were done, which the Americans effectively ignored. With the Chinese, no such peace attempts were going on.
But you didn't answer the question that we had about
I would
this.
like to point something out.
Could you answer the question?
No, that is your final question.
It was total war.
That is your final question.
This is my final.
This is your final question.
Could we hear the answer to the question, though?
It was total war.
Mike, the final question.
My final question. As you can see on the projector, I have this is a letter that I mentioned in the beginning, offer of friendship, and here I also have the Potsdam Declaration. Several attempts were made on the U.S. side to end the war peacefully, which the Japanese purposely ignored. And here, number 4 of the Potsdam Declaration states, "The time has come for Japan to decide whether she will continue to be controlled by those self-willed militaristic advisors whose unintelligent calculations have brought the Empire of Japan to the threshold of annihilation, or whether she will follow the path of reason."
Well, I believe I already answered
I'm
this
not done.
question when Mr.
Can I just-
Ramakandan
Okay.
What is your question?
So, after I read this and after you see this, did Japan or did it not have a choice to surrender?
I'm going to say it again. The concept of surrender was also a matter of respecting the religious rules followed since 600 BC
And keep you in power.
in the Shinto religion. I believe I already answered this question when Mr. Ramakantan asked me it about the Potsdam Declaration. But it was the concept of unconditional surrender that Japan was so against.
Thank you. That's your final question. The judge will give permission for a re-examination by the prosecution. They have time for 2 questions.
It is merely presenting evidence. And here, unconditional surrender is the only obstacle. Okay? I'll ask her.
Your question, please.
You okay?
Yeah, just what's this called? So
It's the magic.
the magic diplomacy, okay. And
Your question, please.
The defense accuses you of holding territories. Can you please clarify that with the evidence provided?
According specifically to the magic diplomacy, which the U.S. had intercepted and translated so they knew what was going on, we had absolutely no idea of annexing or holding the territories which since occupied during the war. Furthermore, the only obstacle, as stated in the diplomacy, was unconditional surrender.
Did U.S. know that unconditional surrender was the only obstacle?
Yes, they did, through the intercepted messages.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Can we do something?
No. The defense will be able to bring up the same information through their own witnesses. Prosecution, do you have any other witnesses to call?
No, Your Honor.
As the prosecution will rest its case, we move to the defense. Defense, would you like to call your first witness?
Don't they have closing statements? Can Winston Churchill please go?
The closing is done at the very end for both sides. Who do you call as your first witness? Speak into the microphone.
Our first witness is Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of Britain.
Sir Winston Churchill, we remind you that you are under oath.
Quite aware.
How would you describe yourself? What kind of man are you?
Well, I was Prime Minister of Great Britain for one term, from May 10th, 1940 till July 26, 1945. I am a great admirer of tradition, and I am rather reasonable. Or at least I am almost always right. You can blame my character if you want, but determination and stubbornness have never served Great Britain a greater deal. As for personals, my hair is the only thing I was ever afraid losing. That and my quite eventful life has made me stronger. I am like many politicians of my time, as I am a scholar of war, though I don't hate myself. Just ice and a good whiskey or Chamberlain will get me going. I do not look down on war and things like that. I only see opportunities. This can make me look a tad cunning sometimes, sure, but it pays. Just take my advice and you can actually get a real quick education on politics, survival and victory.
How successful have you been in your political endeavors?
Since I can remember, people have been taking my advice, and I seem to have a little doubt about my ideas and views. Just look at what I've done. I was right in thinking to send all British tanks to Suez in 1940, and we pulled through on our front in North Africa and we're still here. But many times people doubt me, and they are quite stupid to do so, because I'm always correct in my predictions. Dardanelles, February 1915. Munich, 1938, October. Ireland, 1940. The Russian Empire and Soviet Union. Antwerp, 1914. Great military victory, and I dare say I take full responsibility. I was darn right about the whole lot, and I'm still correct today. Here, even when people still hold against me. I have predicted the most brutal and devastating war, and I knew there was only one way to end it. Alas, right again.
How well did you know FDR, and how well did you know President Truman?
I was associated with Franklin D. Roosevelt since 1918, until the day he died. A great man he was, very strong. I dare say he did a good job in his time. Saved my hind in his 1940 election. When I met with Truman for the first time in 1945, I was afraid he'd have ruined our relations with Russia. I was afraid we would lose the help we got from the Soviets at the time, and especially in Japan. And the situation was already fragile and unstable due to the atomic bomb. But Truman handled the situation with the utmost care, making sure to keep an eye on Stalin. When he told me personally that he was going to bomb Hiroshima, I told him up front that I stood behind his decision, and I would back him if trouble would arise. I was agreeing with him that we should end the war right away. Mind you, Roosevelt would have taken the same exact measures as far as he lived for. May he rest in peace. That's how much we were associated with America. After the bombing, England was in Attlee's hand.
When did you find out about the Manhattan Project and the A-bomb? And how did you react? What were your main concerns about the bomb?
Well, Roosevelt told me about the possibility of a bomb in our second major Allies meeting in Yalta, February 1945. I knew about the bomb 7 months before it was released on the city of Hiroshima in August 1945. When he first told me, he told me how long he was working on it before he decided to consult me. I was very angry with him at first for telling me so much later on, 3 years since he started the project. We had a disclosure deal, and he was supposed to give me full disclosure on the matter as far as I and the deal were concerned. But then he asked me about the actual usage of the bomb. I did not hesitate to say that the bomb could give us a lot of control over Stalin and his reign, perhaps tame him a little for further expansion. But he was simply asking me if he should use it or not. I said yes, use it. By God, use the bomb and end this war. I do not know if I was the one who convinced him, and I surely was not the one who released the bomb, but I was determined to use the bomb to our benefit, the Allies. This benefit only came to me in one form, and that was ending World War II. When we held our last big meeting in Potsdam, now with Truman instead of Roosevelt, I could not see any other way. We would use the bomb against Japan. It was not up to me at that point, but if I was, I would have spared another 3 weeks of war and dropped it that same day. Stalin wasn't concerned, as he didn't ask any questions. He was just positive about having another big bomb. That's when I knew that they were good to go, for I was no longer Prime Minister.
Where were you when Truman made the decision and carried out the bombing? Did you know? Were you in favor of the second bomb as well?
I was out of office by the 26th of July. It was the end of my term. So a week and a half later meant I did not know when the actual bombing took place until Clement Attlee knew. When I heard, I knew the Japanese didn't surrender, and I was very disturbed by it. I was afraid there was no other option but to bomb them again. And when Truman did, I knew the war was over, finally. You asked me how I feel about the second bomb. It was a full devotion, bombing the Japanese again. Because when you bomb someone with a little boy, you better be ready with a fat man right after, if need be. War is brutal, but it is terminal, and it is the last option. One as important and as necessary as any other. Yes, there is sacrifice. Yes, there are lives to be had. Yes, there is a greater cause. But what's done is done, and there is no turning back. When you fight a war and take a man's life, you are devoting yourself to do a whole bloody lot of it. It's war until the bloody end. I have confessed to you before that I am a scholar of war. So believe an experienced soldier when he tells you that there was nothing more to do and nothing more necessary than that bomb. We exhausted all options. If you're going to raise hell for a moral cause, you raise it to the rooftops of the hot chambers of the devil Hitler so that God can feel his own feet trembling on heaven's floors. I would raise hell for democracy, in or out of term. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Churchill, you come from a country who adopted autocracy about 1,000 years ago, correct?
That is correct.
Can you tell me to what extent are the king and queen important to you? Or as any citizen of Britain?
The king and queen important to me and any citizen.
So I can safely conclude that they're a symbol of England and their national pride and their, obviously, just like you stated, great importance.
Obviously, yes.
Can I have evidence number 1? Excuse me. Can you please read the 6th condition of the Potsdam Declaration?
There must be eliminated for all time the authority and influence of those who have deceived and misled the people of Japan into embarking on world conquest. For we insist that a new order of peace, security, and justice will be impossible until irresistible militarism is driven from the world.
You were wholly present during the Potsdam Declaration, correct?
Yes, I was.
So what you meant by that is that all officials who ever contributed to the Japanese expansion will be eliminated or killed, correct? Answer my question.
Eliminated and killed isn't the only response for driven from the world.
Well, that's what you say in your final ultimatum. You say eliminated.
I did not mean murder or injustice.
Objection, it's vague. Eliminate doesn't mean killed.
Yeah.
Okay, your objection is sustained, but we'll allow the witness to explain his...
I'm asking the witness to explain eliminate.
Yes. We were trying to eliminate the militarism.
Okay.
Now, and that is not killing.
Okay.
It's not the only option.
I accept that. And the king and queen are really important in your country. Then why didn't you take into account the importance of the Japanese emperor to the Japanese society and mention it in your ultimatum, rather than let the Japanese anticipate what that meant?
The Japanese emperor is included in this statement.
I don't see the Japanese emperor's name in that.
Do you see anybody else's name included?
No.
Exactly.
That's exactly my point. If you don't know who's going to be prosecuted, who would in their right mind surrender? Can I have evidence number 2? Can you read this extract, please?
The Japanese government are ready to accept the terms enumerated in the joint declaration which was issued at Potsdam on July 26, 1945, by the heads of the government of the United States, Great Britain, and China, and later subscribed by the Soviet government, with the understanding that the said declaration does not comprise any demand which prejudices the prerogatives of His Majesty as a sovereign ruler.
And this is one day after the Fat Man, August 10th.
After?
Fat Man.
Yes.
One day, Minister of August 10th. So this proves that the Japanese were curious what will happen to the emperor, correct?
Correct.
Then how are they supposed to surrender? That's all, Your Honor.
I don't think this is a valid question for me because by July 26, I was out of office.
You issued the Potsdam Declaration, sir.
Yes, I was at Potsdam, but Attlee, Clement Attlee, he issued this, not
It was
me.
under you, sir.
What?
It was under you.
No, Clement Attlee, I was under him. He was
You
Prime
must have
Minister.
suggested him this.
Objection. This is an argumentative question. He has clearly been out of office. If you wanted to talk to Attlee, he would have been up here.
Yes, the witness is correct. He was out of office at that time.
He was at...
You may be seated.
He was at Potsdam Declaration, sir. Potsdam Declaration, he's denying it.
I was at the...
Well, yeah, this is what the Japanese said after.
Your next witness, please.
LeMay.
We'd like to call the next witness, Curtis LeMay.
General Curtis LeMay.
Here, wait.
There is no smoking in my courtroom.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. You on it still?
All right.
Hello?
Oh, okay. So, first of all, who are you?
I am General Curtis LeMay, and during World War II, I was the commander of the 21st Bomber Group in the Pacific War against the Japanese, and later became the Strategic Air Command. I was born in Columbus, Ohio on November 15, 1906. I studied civil engineering at Ohio State. I was also in the ROTC there. After college, I was in the National Guard and then accepted into Air Corps in 1929 as the second lieutenant. From there, I was the commander of the 305th Bombardment Group in Europe from 1942 to 1943 until I was transferred to the Pacific.
What is your justification for switching from conventional bombs to fire bombs in your fire raids in Japan, along with the alteration in the altitude height, and do you believe it was necessary or immoral in any way?
I do believe that the choice for the switch of the fire bombs from the usual conventional bombs, because during our time in Japan we have noticed one thing about the people there, and that is that people had a very high morale in which they did anything for their emperor and would not surrender out of it.
All right. Do you believe that the atomic bomb or the fire raids on Japanese cities were immoral?
First of all, I know every soldier thinks something of the moral aspects of what he's doing, but all war is immoral, and if you let that bother you, then you're not a good soldier. So no, I do not believe what I did was immoral because, one, I was told when I first got into command I was to get results because my predecessor before did not get any results, and he was in a later fight. What happened in Tokyo was a strategic plan of destroying the factories that helped the war effort, and to also destroy the morale of the Japanese people as well as their government to lead them to surrender. In fact, and basically, I was trying to lead them to surrender as quickly as possible.
Do you believe that the destruction of over 30 cities was necessary to force the Japanese forces to finally surrender?
I do believe that there was some need for it because the fact that I believe my bombs could have ended the war, but as we saw, it did not. They did not surrender after the destruction of cities, but I do believe that it was necessary because it was a way that would lead to the end of the agony of war. Plus, it was cheaper, it would save lives on both sides unless we had an invasion which would lead to more deaths.
What is your opinion about civilians being involved in the war?
It was unfortunate that civilians were brought into the war, but we lived in a world where men still had to kill in order to avoid being killed, or in order to avoid having their beloved nation stricken and emasculated. It wasn't intentional for civilians to be brought into this situation, but we had to get the job done so that the war would end quicker and end up saving more lives on both sides. In fact, Japan's Prince Fumimaro Konoe supported my tactic when he said the determination to make peace was a prolonged bombing.
What is your view on Truman's decision to drop the atomic bombs on Japan?
I believe that he made the right choice because we have tried many methods on trying to get them to surrender as soon as possible, but clearly that didn't work. And an invasion would have made the war last longer, and it would have cost more lives. So I believe that he made the right choice.
All right, thank you.
Your witness.
Now, General LeMay, during your bombing campaigns, almost 1 million Japanese civilians were killed, correct?
Almost 1 million. You sure of that?
Yes, it's in the Strategic Bombing Survey.
Okay.
Okay. During your bombing of Germany, almost over 1 million civilians were killed, correct? That's also stated in the bombing survey, if you were wondering. In the attacks on Hamburg in the summer of 1943, 100,000 civilians were killed, correct?
Yes.
In the bombing of Dresden, almost 300,000, in 1945, by the way, 300,000 civilians were killed, correct?
Yes. Is this supposed to relate to what happened in Japan?
Just answer the questions. So, what I see here, this looks like 3 presidents that have been set by you to target civilians. Truman later used his president to justify his bombing, correct?
Yes.
Bring it. I'll read it. This looks like a pattern of targeting civilians. These 3 raids were presidents set by the Allied Bomber Command that showed President Truman that it was okay to bomb civilian targets. Would you not agree?
But
Yes, thank you.
I like to.
The bombing campaign
we'll
against
allow him to respond.
Okay. The bombing campaign against Japan had successfully destroyed 40% of the 66 cities targeted, correct?
It was 65.
65, okay. Again, it says in the Strategic Bombing Command, 66. But okay. Do you personally believe that the bomb was necessary?
My bombs. Yes.
The atomic bomb?
The atomic bomb, yes, I do believe.
You
And the
believe it
reason-
was necessary?
Okay.
I would like to bring up evidence number 1. In a press conference of September 20th, 1945, could you please state what the last statement you made on this
This one right
conference? Yes, please.
The atomic bomb had nothing to do with the end of the war at all. Okay. The atomic bomb had nothing to do with the end of the war at all. Can I see that evidence? Oh, yeah. Evidence too.
That's it.
Your question?
No, but where's the...
You says the atomic bomb had nothing to do with the end of war, but you just said you supported it, but it had nothing to do with it.
Objection.
Yeah, where's it?
Saying nothing to do with the end of the war at all, it's rather vague. There's not really any...
Just like the Potsdam Declaration. Yes, thank you.
But let's allow order, please. Let's allow the general to respond to your question.
Yes,
to explain the
respond
quote.
to the last comment. What do you mean by this?
Well, one was the fact that, I mean, let's face it, I thought personally that I could have ended it with my bombs, but the point was that it wasn't working. The other point is that the atomic bomb allowed for us to end the wars quickly, and it almost gave the emperor an excuse to end the war, so he didn't look like he was sort of weak.
So the bomb was unnecessary?
No, the bomb wasn't.
You said that you could have ended it with the way you were already bombing. So
That's
it was
true.
unnecessary. Thank you. No further questions.
You may be seated. You may be seated. Your next witness, please.
We'd like to call witness Leslie R. Groves to the stand.
Mr. Groves, you are under oath. Your first question, please.
Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, 1 second.
Yes, Mr. Groves, please be seated. Your next witness.
Marshal George Catlett.
George Catlett Marshall to the stand, please. Your witness.
Okay. Who are you and what is your position in the case?
Ladies, gentlemen, I am General George Marshall, and I have the honor to hold the position of the Chief of Staff of the United States of America during World War II. Throughout the construction of the atomic weapon, and during the time that President Truman had to make his final decision about its use, I was on his side, helping him find an answer regarding America's future, as well as that of the world. In fact, I was in charge of the inland invasion, which he was preparing alongside the atomic bombs. This was one of those who urged him to push towards the use of such a weapon, knowing the limited chances of defeating Japan through such an attack. Having said that, I am here to help in the confirmation of the President's innocence.
How did the military view such an action? Was no one concerned one bit about the lives of those innocent Japanese civilians?
Since the beginning, the United States military and myself, as the Chief of Staff, were indifferent about making any decision about such an action, since it was truly a political matter. However, personally, I supported the President and the Manhattan Project. What you must understand is that in a case of war, the military's primary concern is to stop any conflict, any way possible, so that as many American soldiers can survive the war. Well, in that instance, it seemed like the only possible way to stop this war was by dropping the bomb. The Japanese were stubborn. They always have been. So now, I ask you, gentlemen, what would you do if you were the Chief of Staff and you knew that such a great number of American soldiers would lose their lives? Would you think of the Japanese civilians, or would you want to get all Americans out of there? I will tell you my answer. These Japs attacked our men without mercy, so we had to fight back to honor those lost at Pearl Harbor.
Being the Chief of Staff, how did you allow the occurrence of such an action?
First of all, it was not in my hands to prevent such an occurrence. However, even if it was, I would not betray the Americans to save the lives of the Japanese. The Japanese who only 4 years before attacked Pearl Harbor without any warning. The horrible effects of radiation, for which I am terribly sorry, were not known to myself or to the President, thus there was nothing holding us back from getting our revenge for the loss of our men in Pearl Harbor. Or about to prevent the Japanese from becoming a greater risk of our nation. Had we not dropped the bomb, the Japanese would have never surrendered, and we would not be having any conversation right now because the United States would have been a great risk. Being the Army Chief of Staff, it was my duty to stand up for my men and for the freedom of my country, and so I did.
What is your personal view regarding the dropping of the atomic bomb?
The atomic bomb was the only way possible of ending the war. Therefore, being the Chief of Staff, I had to take the risk and support its use against the Japanese. Of course, I knew that civilian lives were to be lost with its release. However, there was no other alternative. The Japanese were not willing to end this war, and our soldiers were getting weaker and weaker. Many were losing their lives. And following the Clausewitz theory of war, the Americans as an offensive force had to have at least 6 times the forces of the Japanese defenders, a power that the United States did not acquire at that point in time. I'm not happy that so many innocent lives were taken away. However, I'm proud, because without the use of this weapon, the United States would still be engaged in this war. Our American soldiers would have been destroyed, and the American society would have been devastated.
How would you justify the President's decision?
The Honorable President Truman made the decision he thought was best for his country. At a time when the United States were engaged in war with such a determined opponent, it was his duty to come up with a plan and an idea that would help this country escape the situation. By dropping the 2 bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the President found the only way possible to end this war. Thousands of American lives were being lost every week, and the Japanese were not willing to back down. You must realize that all American leaders tried to find multiple alternatives before coming down to the dropping of the bombs, but all were too weak to force the Japanese to surrender. In fact, before the President made his final decision, he specifically called me and asked for an estimated cost of the inland invasion and American lives, an invasion which I was planning for the past year. So I looked him in the eye and I said that 250,000 to 1 million American casualties would have to be expected. In that instant, we both knew that there was no other alternative. You're viewing this as the public, but no one has the experience to realize the seriousness of this situation. The United States were at risk, and you expect the nation's leader to not use a weapon that would help the country survive? Before I close, I must remind you all that President Truman is the contrary of his charges. You may think him cruel and inhumane for an action he took to save his country. However, he has shown his humanity through his countless attempts to help Europe and the world rebound from one of the most devastating wars in history. Together, we created the European Recovery Project. So do not judge a person for saving his country. In my opinion, President Truman should have been held guilty had he not taken the risk of dropping the bombs and saved his country.
Lastly, looking back, do you realize the seriousness of the Manhattan Project and the tragedy that it caused to the Japanese people?
Of course. If you knew me, you would know that I was one of those men that believed America should not guard against too much gratification over our country's success, as it undoubtedly involved a very large number of Japanese casualties. If it were not for the better of our country, I would have never supported such an action. However, the dropping of the atomic weapon occurred at a time of serious war, when the safety of American men was on the line. Therefore, such an action can be justified.
Thank you. That will be all.
Your witness.
Thank you for the very, very...
Order in the court.
Thank you for the very patriotic speech. Thank you.
As a military person,
You,
it is my
along
duty.
with Secretary Stimson, were in charge of recommending the military aspects of the Manhattan Project to President Truman.
Yes, although my work was very indirect.
Still work. Okay, can I have evidence number 2 from the interim meeting on May 31st, 1945? Number 2. Thank you. In this, okay, could you read the red part?
Could I have a mic?
You want a copy? Okay. Oh, you want mine?
Yeah. All of it?
Only that in red.
Okay. Though we could not concentrate on the civilian area, but that we should seek to make a profound psychological impression on concentrate on the civilian area.
So here it says that you should not attack a civilian target. Correct?
Yes. However,
Thank you. So, since you should not do that, Hiroshima was a very high priority military target, correct?
yes.
Okay. Evidence number, please. Number 3, please.
As we wait for the evidence, can I say something?
Well, just know that this is on the initial meeting of the targeting committee. And, okay, it's on the board. Okay.
Order in the court, please.
Do you want a copy of it? It says, Hiroshima is the largest target not on the 21st Bomber Command's priority list. Not on the priority list. Now, why would the United States bomb cities that were not militarily or industrially important?
But they were industrially important.
It says
In
right
fact,
there, it was not on the primary list.
I don't care what this says, but with
You were
my
present at this
experience-
meeting and you agreed with Secretary Stimson and others of the targeting committee
I'm sorry.
about this.
Are you willing to doubt my military experience because of this?
No.
I'm not saying that I was not present in that meeting. However, I do believe that both the cities that were bombed were actually great industrial centers, and this is why we picked those.
Your next question.
Was not on the priority list. Just repeating that again. Okay. Not on the priority list. So.
Whatever you want.
Okay, since they were not on the priority list, the only reason you could have targeted these cities were because of civilians.
I think I have mentioned many, many times that the point of these bombs were not to kill many Japanese, but to kill less Americans. As you know, the United States was involved in this war for a really long time. So had we not dropped these bombs, it would have been a great number of Americans lost. And this is my concern, and that was the president's concern. He is the leader of one of the greatest countries in the world, especially at that time. And what was he supposed to do? Just think of the opponent and not save his men? Would that have been honorable, in your opinion?
Next question.
So, then why did he not accept the Japanese attempts at surrender? As Emperor Hirohito mentioned, twice through Sweden and once through Portugal. And they were the same terms that he would accept in the end, violating the emperor's stay. He was so concerned for saving American lives. Why did he not accept the terms?
But the Japanese were not to surrender.
So were you listening when Emperor Hirohito said that there was 3 attempts made
Were you
to
not
surrender?
listening about both the Potsdam Declaration and all of the peace tries that the United States tried to make? What were the Americans? They were not trying to kill their own men. They were trying to stop this war, not only for the safety of Americans, but the world. Because the Japanese
So
at that
they could have
time...
accepted the terms the Japanese sent through Sweden and Portugal.
Why did they send it to the Americans directly?
Mike, you're out of order. You do not get to ask a question. Your final question?
I could answer it if you want to. When
No,
two nations...
no, David.
Okay.
Witness, you may step down.
Wait, so just to summarize. Hiroshima, according to this, which you were there and agreed upon, was not a military priority list, on the military priority list.
Yes, but it was industrial.
Bomber
Thank
Command.
you. You've
Yes
answered the
or no?
question.
Thank you.
You may be seated. Your next witness, please. You wish to call the previous
Leslie
witness?
R. Groves.
Yeah. Leslie R. Groves to the stand.
Sorry for the delay.
Order in the court, please. Your question.
All right. What part did you play in the dropping of the bomb, and why was that important?
I was the manager of the Manhattan Project, which was the project responsible for the development of the atomic bomb. I'm an engineer, not actually a nuclear physicist, but I was in charge of all the scientists and physicists, and I oversaw the work they did. This was important because I kept the project on track, and I ensured that progress was timely and successful results were produced. I did this by conducting many tests in the deserts of New Mexico, mostly Los Alamos.
All right. What is your opinion on the droppings of the bomb?
I feel that the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were necessary. Statistically, more Americans and Japanese soldiers would have died in combat if the war had continued in the same direction. We needed something to stop the war, and in the end, both sides would benefit from this.
How does your research and knowledge back up your argument?
I wrote many memorandums to the president describing the results of our tests in New Mexico. My research shows that the government was aware of the effects of the bomb, and therefore our actions were intentional, and the detonation of the bomb produced the desired result. This implies that we knew beforehand that the deaths of the bomb wouldn't surpass the deaths of the war, wouldn't surpass the deaths that would have happened if the war had ensued in the same fashion.
All right. Thank you.
Prosecution, your witness to cross-examine.
Mr. Groves, so did you know about the radiation?
Yes, to a certain extent.
It's a yes or no question.
What?
So yes.
I believe I have the right to explain myself.
Okay.
From our research concluded that the radiation would only last for a few days.
Okay. So in the memorandum for the Secretary of War that you wrote, you stated that radioactive material in small quantities was located as much as 120 miles away from the first test.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have evidence 3? Okay. So as we can see, this is a memorandum from you, Mr. Groves, to the Secretary of War on April 23rd. You're talking here about the development and the improvement of commercial and industrial power for biological, medical, and industrial applications of the radioactive substances. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you cared a lot about the development of the economy and the industry during the war.
I guess I am.
And you wanted the improvement to continue no matter what would happen.
I understand the relevance.
Answer the question.
Can you rephrase the question?
Okay. So you wanted to continue this process, the development and the improvement of the industry and the economy of the United States, no matter what would happen.
Objection, vague, no matter if what happened.
Yeah, I don't understand what could happen.
Okay.
Rephrase your question.
Okay. He states here that there must be continuous, vigorous, and extensive research and development of the possibilities of atomic energy during April, end of April, and June, so during the whole time, right?
Yes.
Okay. And here you don't refer about any exceptions that would change your plans.
Well, doesn't that just mean all our results were successful?
Excuse me?
You're assuming that we had problems in the development. There were no problems.
I didn't say something like that.
What is your next question, please?
Okay.
I want to see your line of questioning.
Okay, yeah. So, don't you think that during a war, researching for the development of atomic energy takes advantage of a lot of money from the government?
No, not at all, because this was a means to end the war, which
Okay.
was the government's main priority at the time.
Okay. So, did you inform Mr. Truman about the effects of the bomb? Because you knew about the radiation, as you said
Yes.
before. Yeah. So you said to Mr. Truman about the radiation.
To the extent that we
No,
understood
it's
it
a
at
yes or
that
no
point,
question.
yes.
Yes. Okay. So, okay. So, Mr. Groves, did you knew the effect on humans?
Sorry?
Did you knew the effect on people?
Of the nuclear bomb?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you knew it. Okay. And you were a member of the target committee, is that correct?
Sorry, the what?
Of the target committee.
Yes.
Yes. So, in the notes of the initial meeting of the target committee on April 10th, there is a statement which says that all main Japanese cities will be the targets. There is no reference on military bases. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Groves, you did, as you can see here, you didn't care about the target being military when you're talking
Cared
about.
about ending the war.
Okay, but you didn't care if it was military or not.
It's irrelevant. As long as the war ends, that's what I care about.
It's a yes or no question.
Your final
No.
question, please.
This is my final question. Can you answer this for me?
No, I didn't really.
You didn't care?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. You may be seated. We have time for 2 more witnesses before lunch. You care to call your next witness?
We'd like to call out Machiavelli to the stand.
Okay, comments, questions?
We appreciate you coming out of your dead of sleep to join us today, Machiavelli.
I appreciate it.
Your witness.
So, who are you? Buongiorno, my name is Nicola Di Bernardo dei Machiavelli. I hope that Judge Nelson has a good reason for calling me back from my dad. They tell me this dear prince in the name of Truman needs my help. My philosophy shall justify his action by using this striking technological device by killing a significant amount of people to justify his acts.
All right. What are the political views and intentions that are interpreted in your most famous book, The Prince? Please discuss some of your political views regarding the current case.
Look, princes are the leading forces of a nation. If one such prince is put in a position, and I quote this, in which it has to face a nation concerning new principalities which are acquired by one's own arms and ability, which I explained very well in my chapter 7 of The Prince, it is clear that when annexing that nation, the prince should be able to be the leading force of the country that he's about to settle in. This can be done preferably by force, since, as I explained in chapter 5 of my book, never permit to allow the memory of their formerly liberty to rest, so that the fastest way is to destroy them or to reside with them. Truman, in this case, did both things.
Could you explain your famous quote stating that the end justifies the means?
Very, very well. In actions of all men, especially of princes, leaders of the nations, where there is no resource to justice, the end is all that counts. A prince should not be only concerned with conquering or maintaining a state, for the means will always be judged by the honorable and praiseworthy by each and every person before the world is nothing other than the masses. In short, at the beginning of an action, I might not be able to determine whether the action is morally right or wrong. But when the morally right goal is successfully achieved, then the steps which led to it must be morally right too, just like Truman did.
Do you think Truman could have achieved this goal in a different way?
Not at all. No, Truman had no other choice. He was found in a situation like King Louis XII, who did 5 mistakes in conquering the northern Italian papal states. He destroyed the minor power completely, had no colonies, increased the strength of his own greater power through that, brought in a foreign power, did not do enough damage to the country in order to settle in it. Finally, that led into his sixth mistake, not putting enough force to shock and destroy the opposition, which I explain again in my chapter 5. If a prince does not destroy the city of capture, he may expect to be destroyed by the state. The exact opposite is what us, the Florentines, because I am the secretary of the Florentines, what we did to Pisa. We destroyed it, and we took all the power and we settled in it. And, well, we still have it. And that's exactly what the Spartans did not do when having Athens and Thebes, because Athens and Thebes revolted and got back what they had. And what I'm trying to get by with this is any other direct way, except for the bomb, would lead, like Russia declaring war on Japan, would lead to the opposite of what I just said.
All right, thank you.
Your witness.
Hello.
Buongiorno.
When did you write your book, the famous?
I wrote my book, The Prince, in the year 1530.
And do you know the content of it? Do you remember the content of your book?
Where are you trying to go with this? I do not understand.
I'm just asking if you remember.
Of course I remember.
Okay.
I wrote a book.
Okay, I'm just asking because it was 500 years ago. So.
Yes.
And I was wondering, you mentioned that if you have a goal, the ends must be met, correct?
The ends justify the means?
Yes.
See.
Okay. So killing is justified to you as long as there's a resolution or a goal to be met, correct?
As long as the goal satisfies everyone, like it did in World War II, yes.
Okay. So killing the dropping of the bomb in Hiroshima and Nanking and killing civilians is justified according.
Isn't Nanking in? Excuse me, I do not live today.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
China.
made a mistake. You're right. The Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So the bombs dropped there are justified for killing the people, correct?
Yes, I said it in my speech.
Okay, so the killing in Nanking is okay then, right?
What exactly does the killing of Nanking have to do with this? I'm sorry.
No,
5 minutes
Nanking is
ago.
a city in China where there was a very big massacre, as there was shown before, pictures.
What is the point of your question?
The defense used Nanking to defend President Truman several times, so we are proving that Machiavelli also says to Japanese it was okay for them to rape Nanking because they wanted to control Manchuria. So
fine, now ask your question.
Okay, so the killing of Nanking is okay, according to you, according to what you said previously, correct?
I have not assessed this case yet. I was only told about the 2 atomic bombs, but if you explain me more later, I can probably
So you know about atomic bombs, but you don't know about a killing.
Oh, it's a great technological device. I would have used it if I was there.
So, and you mentioned that Truman had no other choice, correct?
He had no other choice, I say. Yeah.
Okay.
Because a war with Japan, as Russia would have done, it wouldn't have worked.
But he had the alternatives to invade the Japanese mainland, hold a demonstration of the destructive power of the atomic bomb for Japanese dignitaries, bomb and block the islands. So why did you say there were no other choices?
Sorry. Scusa. Because Truman had to massively destruct the 2 cities, because whilst it is, and I quote, whilst it is easy to persuade one nation, it is difficult to fix them to their persuasion. Unarmed, the goal of Truman wouldn't be possible. Bombs would be equal to the solution, to the end of World War II.
Thank you. That's your final question.
Okay, thank you.
Grazie.
I would like to call
Your next witness, please.
General MacArthur.
Who are you and what role did you play in World War II?
known as General Douglas MacArthur, son of Arthur MacArthur. Sorry, what was the question?
Okay. Who are you, and what role did you play in World War II?
Oh, okay. Well, I've been in the United States military for 52 years. In 1942, I was appointed the Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces in the Southwest Pacific. And during the war, I took over some of the smaller Pacific islands.
Okay. Did you feel that the small attacks on the Pacific Japanese islands were necessary?
The small island attacks were strategic. By taking the small islands with relative ease and almost no loss of life, we were able to gain the upper hand in the war. We constructed air bases on the islands we took, which enabled us to disrupt Japanese supply routes to bigger bases. This strategy gained the most while losing the least.
Wait, for the next, can we wait till the judge comes back, please?
Oh, sorry, I didn't even know he was going.
No, you may begin.
Sorry.
Did you remain or return to Japan after the war ended?
I'm actually in Japan right now. After the war, I was appointed the Supreme Allied Commander of the Occupation Force in Japan. I helped by bringing in tax experts from our nation, and I managed to get $2 billion to help rebuild the Japanese economy. I also introduced health reforms, which helped eliminate cholera, which is a disease, and decrease several other diseases amongst the Japanese population.
What was your objective in the war?
Well, other than to command the military in order to succeed, my main goal was to protect the United States. I did not participate in this war to kill the Japanese or anybody for that matter. We did what we did to protect our nation. This is represented by the fact that after the war, I remained in Japan to help rebuild their damaged and social economic infrastructure.
Why are you defending Truman? Why are you supporting his decision?
The use of the atomic bomb was a decision made by the United States government and the commander-in-chief. I'm a general in the United States Army, and Truman is my commander. I take orders from the commander, and you will have to direct further questions along the same topic to him. It was not a question of what was right or wrong, it was a question of what was necessary.
What was your reaction to the atomic bomb? Do you truly believe it was justified?
I truly believe that the Japanese were not going to surrender. I am loyal to our country, and I support the decisions that our government has made.
You stated that you were absolutely livid with the decision of the president to drop the atomic bomb. Have you changed your mind about that?
My initial reaction was that the atomic bomb was not a good choice. But after much consideration, and I realized that Truman has much more experience in the field than I do, I support the decisions that our government has made, and I do believe that without the atomic bomb, we would still be at war now.
Thank you.
General MacArthur, when were you notified of the existence of the atomic bomb?
I was not consulted about the atomic bomb.
You were notified 2 days before, actually, on August 4th. Can I have evidence number 4 up on the board, please? Okay, I'll ask you. So, you were notified of the existence of the atomic bomb on August 4th, 1945, 2 days prior to the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Okay. You were not let in the loop about the atomic bomb. Evidence number 4. This should not be number 4. Check the others. Thank you. Last one. Yes, sir. All right, next one. And the evidence seems to have been lost.
You just have to read it.
But okay. All right. Can you get the evidence? All right. So you were not let into the loop. Correct. Okay. And Truman's diary entry on June 17th, 1945, he calls you Mr. Prima Donna 5-star General. I think this shows that he does not respect your military opinion, correct?
Possibly.
Yes. Okay, yes. Okay. Besides that, okay. You cared very much for the safety of Allied POWs during the war, after what had happened at the Bataan Peninsula, where you had left thousands of Americans, Filipino soldiers?
Correct.
Yes?
So speak directly into the microphone, please.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, would you approve of that, of any American branch of the military to kill Allied POWs? You're killing your own people, is what I'm saying. Would you say that's okay by any branch of the military?
No.
So you disapprove of the bombing
No, that's
of
not what I
Nagasaki
said.
because there was a POW camp in Nagasaki called Fukuoka number 14. And because of the bomb, several Allied POWs were killed.
In the circumstances, can I answer this? Sorry.
Yeah,
it's
of
not
course,
answered.
yeah.
Okay. Without the bomb, the war would still be going on. The Japanese, based on what happened in Okinawa, we were able to see that the Japanese were not going to surrender. They had a lot of resistance, and it was clear that they were not going to surrender. I do believe that, well, both sides decided to participate in the war, and in wars people died.
Can I just ask you, so it's okay, so the sacrifice of Allied POWs was okay?
Yes.
So, okay, so then the invasion would have been okay, even though, in your opinion, it would have been okay, even though Japanese promised to kill all Allied POWs.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Okay, you said that it was okay for Allied POWs to die, right? But
Use the word justified rather than okay.
Justified.
Justified, yes.
It was justified. Okay, so
Our
you
priority-
would let your own country kill your own people. You did
Our
not even wait
priority was to end the war.
by killing your own soldiers.
Our priority was to end the war. It was not to kill any specific people. It was to end the war, and that's what we've done.
So you killed your own people.
Order.
All right.
Final question?
No, I have several more. So you sent a memorandum to President Roosevelt 2 days before he traveled to Yalta. Can I have evidence number 5 if it works now? All right, number 4 then. Number 6. Okay, thank you. In May 1948, you met with former President Herbert Hoover and discussed the atomic bomb. And as recorded by Hoover, you said, MacArthur said that it was correct and that he would not have avoided all of the losses, the atomic bomb, and the entry of Russia into Manchuria if he had accepted a memorandum that MacArthur sent to President Roosevelt 7 months prior to the ending of the war. Do you want a copy of the memorandum?
Yes, please.
Okay. This was based on an article. Is it? It shows that you sent them a 40-page memorandum stating exactly the same terms that Truman agreed upon at the end of the war. 7 months prior to the ending. And if I'm not wrong, Okinawa would not have happened if the United States would have accepted this, which they did anyway. They just waited 7 months longer.
Your question? Is that correct?
Is that correct?
Uh,
Yes, no,
Can I answer maybe?
no.
No.
Objection, speculation.
She asked the source right in front of her.
I'm going to overrule the objection. We are asking for this witness's speculation based on his position.
What's their opinion?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat the question?
The memorandum, 40 pages, you sent to FDR 7 months before the end of the war, had the same terms, basically, that the United States accepted 7 months later. But of course, with the bombings, the invasion of Okinawa, and several more American deaths as well.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You may be seated. At this time, we will take a brief recess. The witnesses and lawyers, everyone from the combo class, we will take a 25-minute break for lunch. If you're from a visiting class, I suppose you're supposed to go back to class now, and you will take lunch at 1:30. But combo class is taking lunch now. We will convene at 1:25. 1:25.